Hello, and welcome to We Live for Saturday, your favorite college football podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike, and with me, as always, is your other co-host, John. John, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good, man. It's been a very eventful weekend. Just did some things with the family. Tried to stay out of the heat as much as I could around here. Been very, very humid. Lots of storms, lots of lightning, thunder, all that kind of good stuff. But overall, man, no major complaints. Just had a good weekend. Played a little college football 25.
Nice.
Yeah. I just went 9-3.
Okay.
We just slid into the 12-team playoff. So
You got into the 12-team playoff at 9-3 out of
it
the
was a
Big
tough
Ten?
schedule. I had a tough schedule.
Sure.
So you got me in.
So who'd you have out of conference then?
Out of conference? Oh God, let me think. Because I don't play it all in one day. I'm not that obsessed with it yet. But it was I believe I played Florida State. I made it so I played Florida State, and then I played the other major opponent was I think it was either Texas or it was it was Texas A&M, but they were already ranked at like number 6.
Oh yeah, that's a monster schedule then.
Yeah. So
you are
it was
not
fun, man. Yeah.
Unlike Lincoln Riley, you were not trying to get out of that game.
No, hell no. I show up.
Yeah.
It's fun, man. I'm loving the game. I'm still learning, dude. It's so crazy because like you play the other one for so many years, even after they stopped making them, and like you got so good at it, and now there's like it's newer, but there's some things that are still the same, but it's just slightly different that it just kind of messes with your head sometimes. So I'm still learning, dude. I'm not an expert by any means, but I'm no longer playing on freshman mode. Let's just say that.
Not playing on freshman mode anymore, huh? What have you graduated to?
Well, I'm playing. I played for varsity for a season after freshman, and now I'm on All-American. So I'm not a Heisman level yet.
Still,
but
by the time I start playing, you're gonna be so far ahead of me.
Yeah, we'll see. It's tough, dude. It's definitely it's not easy, man. The AI is so much smarter than the last version.
Oh yeah, I bet the computer is a little tougher to maneuver around.
Absolutely.
I'm sure they make adjustments, unlike last time around.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, man. But what about you? What have you been up to?
Oh, I had a pretty solid weekend in that I got to see an actual Big Ten football team practice in person last night, right here in Minneapolis, in Dinkytown, watching the Minnesota Golden Gophers. So that was a really good time. It was a pretty solid turnout. Crowd. I feel like the crowd gets younger every year at these events in a way. And I think there's like even more and more enthusiasm. And it makes sense because if you think, at this point, the Gophers have been playing pretty good ball for like 12 years, mostly, more or less. So the people who grew up in a place where the Gophers were worth watching.
Yeah.
So it's fun to have that vibe and to get out to practice. And man, just to see everybody playing and live reps, and there was intensity. I mean, it got chippy on the second play. Like the second play got chippy. PJ jumped in, was like, hey now, rein it in. I can't remember exactly what he said, but something to that effect. And that was not the only time it got chippy, but it never felt like, ugly in any way. It was just guys getting after it.
That's awesome. So
that's what's fun about this time of year. And, early August is a great time. There are no losses in early August.
It's true.
And you can read things all kinds of different ways. And I was lucky enough to see a practice where I thought Minnesota played really well. So that was exciting to see. But obviously you don't know for sure until you see it on Saturday. Doesn't mean anything until then.
That's true. I've heard good things about what happened at practice last night. A lot of good things written about it. I think there's a lot to look forward to with our team. But I've heard a lot, across the Big Ten. There's lots of good pieces coming in, lots of exciting stuff across the entire conference. So
Oh yeah,
it's
and it's
what
just
we do.
cool this time of year that fans get to go see their team,
Exactly.
and be up close and really kind of get to know your squad and get a new depth chart and look over it and see who the new number whatever is who graduated last year, or all that kind of stuff. And especially now in the transfer portal era, you want to get that, you want to familiarize yourself in advance. You don't want to show up in week 1 and be like, all right, now who's starting?
Yeah. Well, and it's just nice for these programs to do this stuff because this is about the fans. This still is about us. And
it's supposed to be.
Yeah. So,
and Minnesota normally, I'm going to say it, I wasn't going to get negative, and I mostly won't, but Minnesota normally will do like 3 open practices in fall or spring, and they did 1 this year. 1. And it was really long. I'll give them credit. I mean, when I sat down it was supposed to start at 5:30. When I sat down at 5:31, it had already started, and they went till 8:09 final whistle. So it was a ton of reps. You got to see a lot of stuff. So I got to really familiarize myself with a lot of guys and, and how people play and things like that. So that was really exciting. But yeah, have the fact that the other 2 open practices are just for media and not for fans. Media doesn't pay the bills, guys. The fans pay the bills. So I guess I get it, because you don't want, in the era of Connor Stallions, like,
we'll get to that.
I get it. We'll get to that. That's a tease, people. Oh, and also, I should say straight up, this is the 3rd in our series of preview episodes before we go any further. And today we are doing a couple Big Ten newcomers in Oregon and USC. And then we're also going to go to the other coast and do Rutgers. So excited to do that. But yeah, man, Gopher practice was fun. I heard that some people who were fans of other Big Ten teams were pretty impressed with the Gophers. So that's always good to hear.
Yeah, love to hear that. That's good.
And so that's fun. So I just think, and I know the Big Ten Network just covered a Minnesota practice and, had a lot of really good things to say. And here's the thing about the Big Ten Network. They will always say positive things about every Big Ten team because they're representing the Big Ten, and that's what they're supposed to do. But they will give hints about whether a team is good or not. And so I'm going to say a team that used to be bad but isn't anymore. So I'm not even going to name the team, but years ago. And I remember Howard Griffith one year was like, there are a lot fewer guys falling down during their drills. And that was his praise about where that team was at. And that team, I believe, went on to go 2-10. So you can get hints about whether they feel legit about a team or not. And I mean, I'm not saying they're projecting them to win the conference or anything. I'm not saying I'm not making, saying we're going to make the college football playoff or anything like that. What I'm saying is that Minnesota is a functional and very competitive Big Ten football team.
Absolutely.
So that was fun.
Yeah, that's
awesome. So we mentioned Connor Stallions.
Yeah.
Is it time to talk a little bit of Michigan?
I think so. I feel like this story it's just rinse and repeat, I know there's new information, but it all still feels the same.
That's a really good way to put it.
It's just, it doesn't, I mean, and to be honest, man, it's not even like we take joy in talking about this kind of stuff. It's just what we have to. This is part of the Big Ten. This is what's going on. Obviously, it is a big deal in the world of college football. And, I don't particularly enjoy talking about Michigan a lot. We had to, and we, for obvious reasons. But I don't like talking about this kind of stuff about any team in particular. So this is it's disappointing that it's happened. It's disappointing that we have to talk about it. And I'm sure Michigan fans out there, you are not wanting to hear about it either. And I'm sure you're over it as well for your own reasons. I totally get it. But this is the way it is, man.
Yeah. So This is an ESPN article by Dan Murphy and Pete Thamel. And I'm just going to quote a little bit from it, and then we can talk about it.
All right.
So, quote, New Michigan head coach Sharon Moore is one of 7 members from the 2023 football program accused of violating NCAA rules in a draft of the NCAA's notice of allegations obtained by ESPN. The draft, which could be subject to change, states Moore could face a show cause penalty and possibly a suspension for allegedly deleting a thread of 52 text messages with former Michigan staffer Connor Stalions in October 2023, on the same day that media reports revealed Stalions was leading an effort to capture the play calling signals of future opponents. The draft states that the texts were later recovered via device imaging, and Moore subsequently produced them to enforcement staff. Moore is accused of committing a level 2 violation, according to the draft. Moore, who took over as the Wolverines head coach in January after serving as their offensive coordinator for several seasons, is considered a potential repeat violator by the NCAA because in August 2023, he negotiated a resolution to claims that he contacted recruits during a COVID-19 recruiting dead period. The new allegations against Moore are part of the long-anticipated notice of allegations related to Stalions' off-campus scouting operation. Former Michigan staff members Jim Harbaugh, Chris Partridge, Denard Robinson, and Stalions are also accused of committing level 1 violations, the most serious category in the NCAA's enforcement process. The school also faces a level 1 violation charge, according to the draft, because of its pattern of non-compliance within the football program and in institutional efforts to hinder or thwart the NCAA's investigation. Former coaches Jesse Minter and Steve Klinkscale are also accused of recruiting violations unrelated to Stalions in the draft. A spokesman for Michigan's football team told ESPN, our athletic department and university continue to cooperate with the NCAA regarding our ongoing investigation. We do not have an update to share regarding its status at this time. Harbaugh, who left Michigan to coach the Los Angeles Chargers after leading the Wolverines to a national title in January, is accused of not cooperating because he denied the NCAA's request to view relevant messages and phone records from his personal cell phone. The draft says Harbaugh could face a show cause restriction if he ever chooses to return to college sports. The Big Ten suspended Harbaugh for the final 3 games of the 2023 regular season as a punishment for Michigan violating the conference's policy. All right. Close quote. All right. I feel like we get the idea.
Yeah.
And the point is that everybody knew. Because previous to this, Jim Harbaugh and everyone involved in this had claimed that this was a situation where Connor Stalions was this rogue agent and he was off by himself, just unilaterally scouting all these other teams somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And that was never that believable. But now we know that everybody was on board.
Yeah, it definitely seems to look like there was a lot of people, or a lot more people in the know of what was going on. The problem is finding enough evidence to punish Michigan or the staff or whoever was responsible accordingly. And I think there's definitely some possibilities of things happening. Do I think that they're going to vacate the wins of Michigan or the national title at this time? No.
Yeah,
but
definitely not.
No. So anyone out there, Ohio State fans, whoever else, are hoping for something like that.
Michigan State fans,
not going to happen.
Yeah.
But there could be some possible issues, some punishments coming to Sharon Moore for like level 2 violations, for what I saw, which would just suspend him for, a part or, a certain amount of games or half the season or whatever, which we saw happen to Harbaugh last year. Obviously did not affect Michigan's success on the field whatsoever. So that is a possibility from what I've seen and what I've read. But as far as just like anything else more severe, I don't see anything. Maybe they're talking about postseason ban. That didn't say anything like that. I know that's a lot of speculation. But I think the only punishment that was mentioned was the potential suspension to Sharon Moore, and that's it.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if they went with a postseason ban.
Yeah.
I would just be genuinely surprised if they went in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, there was no way. I mean, it says Stallions scouted at least 13 teams in person on 58 different occasions. And a lot of those times were obviously Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
So we've said this before. I'm going to say it one more time for posterity. What's frustrating about Michigan last year is that they didn't need to cheat
Yes.
at all for any reason. That team was bulletproof. They weren't, they had essentially 2 close games, and honestly, those games shouldn't have been as close as they were.
Yeah.
Michigan was clearly the better team in both of those games.
Mm-hmm.
And every other game they dog walked the competition. So they didn't need to cheat to do that. But they did. They did.
Yep. Well, I mean, I know I posted on Twitter, but I believe that, and this can go out to Third and Wolverine and Rican Raider. I'm just letting you guys know that you are welcome to surrender the jug at any time.
It's the right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do. Just show up to there's Huntington Bank Stadium. I'll meet you outside. We can walk it in together. There'll be no hostility. I promise. We'll make sure everything goes very smooth. But I strongly suggest you bring it on by sooner than later.
And if you win this year, you can have it back.
That's it. But it probably belongs here in Dinkytown. At this point.
Probably should be here. Oh man, I wish that was the way it worked.
I know, but in all seriousness, though, like this is some wild stuff, and it is serious. Like this is a serious thing. This kind of stuff, I'm sure happens and has happened forever, to varying degrees. The SEC. But that's just the way it is, man. And I do think that there should be some level of punishment. I don't know to what degree. I don't have faith that there's going to be anything very severe, though. And if this is the NCAA, it may never happen. Just because it's them. So.
No, I'd be shocked if it was anything. I could see Sharon Moore being suspended anywhere from like 3 to 6 games.
Yeah.
And, Sharon Moore doesn't necessarily have a Sharon Moore to hand the team to. So it's possible that could actually matter,
Sure.
depending on which games they were and, how things are going and, whether, they're clicking on all cylinders or need some coaching up to accomplish what they need to do. But if it's just a thing where he can coach him during the week but can't be there during the game, that's not. I said that with Harbaugh. That's barely a suspension.
Yeah.
Because you've already put in the whole game plan. You've already baked the cake. Like, at that point, you just have to make adjustments on game day, and it's a lot easier to have someone step in and do that. Mm-hmm. So if they're gonna give Sharon Moore, a game, and I'm not saying they necessarily should. I'm not sure what they should do. But if they're going to, suspend him for games, then he should be suspended from practice too.
Yep.
It is a farce to just suspend coaches for games, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. I agree entirely.
That said, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to amount to anything because it's the NCAA and they are toothless.
Exactly. Yeah. So we'll just hear a lot of crying and complaining. It'll be a big to-do about nothing. So that's what it is. But yeah, man, we'll see how this progresses. Obviously, if anything further happens, we'll report on it. Until then, it's kind of feels like the same story we talked about before.
Yeah, it's Groundhog Day all over again.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? We are weeks, not months. We are weeks away from actual football.
Hell yeah.
And that means that all that kind of stuff is going to fade to the background no matter what.
Can't wait.
And that's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can just talk ball. until there's like realignment that happens in the middle of the season or something terrible like that. And then we're forced to just dig into that. And that would make me so upset.
Yeah, like Florida State will declare like mid-October that they're leaving the ACC, and and everyone's gonna be like, oh, where are they going? Where like that's the way it's. Big Ten, SEC, Big Ten, SEC, and the games will stop.
And then it'll be the Big 12.
Yep.
And and then, but that'll be. But maybe not. Maybe we will get through a whole season and everything will just be about ball. I can't, fingers.
I'm with you.
All right.
Time
to get into these previews.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's hit it.
Okay. First of all, we are going to talk about the USC Trojans. And we have one contributor for USC, and he is at Alex E525 on Twitter. So go give him a follow.
Heck yeah.
Great Trojan account. Lots of good information. So, give him a follow, give him some love. All right. First question. Now that you've seen how your team did in the portal and how spring went, what is your expectation for this season and what is your projected record for 2024? 9-3 is probably a realistic expectation, says Alex, but I'm hoping for 10-2. Hopefully an improved defense and Miller Moss stepping up in a big way. Rank the following position groups in how strong you think they are comparatively. And Alex went wide receiver, QB, linebacker, secondary, tight end, running back, O-line, D-line, special teams. Now, a couple things jump out at me when I look at that, if that's anywhere near accurate. One is wide receiver. USC could be really, really scary.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they could be every bit on par with like an Ohio State or an Oregon at wide receiver this year.
Yep.
So they're going to be really talented there. And then I just see in the last three things, the lowest rated O-line, D-line, special teams. And I thought, man, that'll get you in trouble once in a while in the Big Ten if you have breakdowns on the line of scrimmage and in special teams.
I do have one qualm, though, with the special teams, though. Like Zachariah Branch as your returner. I mean, it's not too bad.
No, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'd say that's pretty great, actually.
Yeah. So
you got to have, but I guess it's all relative, and maybe USC is going to be great everywhere.
Could be.
We got to be open to that too.
Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to interrupt that one little piece.
No, absolutely. That is what this is for. 3, which players are the best for each position group? Deuce Robinson at wide receiver, Miller Moss at QB, Arnold at linebacker, John Humphrey in the secondary, McCree at tight end, Woody Marks at running back, Monheim on the OL, and of course, Bear Alexander at defensive line, and then Branch on special teams. Because, if you can, it's amazing to take your best players and put them in a position on special teams to make plays with their speed.
Yep.
It's something to see. I wish more coaches would put a premium on doing that.
Yeah, I wish there was a coach that would do that. That'd be nice. Yeah.
Honestly, across the Big Ten, we're too conservative on special teams. I'm saying I'm going to bang the drum on that. We used to be, when you think of, and like, I don't want to old man this, but you think 10, 15 years ago, there were a lot more plays made on special teams.
Yeah.
Than you see now. Teams are a lot more conservative now on special teams. And I think that's not great.
Yep. I agree. But Zachariah Branch, man, he's electric, dude.
He's absolutely the truth. Electric. At wide receiver too.
Yep.
He'll be scary. I mean, that kind of speed kills. And that kind of speed will break you if you're not ready for it. You're going to give up. I think a lot of teams are probably going to give up a lot of yards to USC between the 20s and just try not to get burned for long touchdowns and then hope they can get stops in the red zone. I feel like that's going to be the strategy that a lot of teams have to use to have any chance to slow USC down, is basically say, okay, we'll give you a field goal try, but that's it. You better stop. We're going to give you until like the 30, 25, but then we're going to get tough. So that's going to be what people have to do, because a lot of them aren't going to have the speed to compete, head to head with USC and those wide receivers.
Yeah.
Which players who are going to play this fall are unproven or proven to be questionable? Said Jacoby Lane, Elijah Page, Alani Noah on offense, Jalen Smith, and Jamal Mohammed on defense. How'd the transfer portal go? Which transfer portal players will make the biggest impact this season? Transfer portal was very solid, completely rebuilt the secondary with Akili Arnold, John Humphrey, Kamari Ramsey, and Greedy Vance. That's a great football name. Greedy Vance.
Love it.
When Greedy, man, imagine the headlines when he gets an interception, right themselves, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's great.
Easton Mascarenas Arnold and Woody Marks are going to be huge additions as well. Which members of the coaching staff are in prove-it mode this year? Will these coaches be fired if things don't go well for their position groups? Technically, the entire defensive staff, says Alex. They aren't on the hot seat because they're all new, but it's an all-star staff, and they need to show at least some improvement in year one. And I would say that's true. Yeah. It is. Lincoln Riley, we'll talk about it later. He picked an all-star staff of coaches, put it together, and said, okay, please stop people across from my air raid, because Lincoln Riley has never had a defense across from his offense that could really reliably stop anybody.
Yep.
So we're wondering, can this happen with the right staff? We're going to find out. And I'm excited to find that out.
Yeah, me too. There's a lot, that's been the question mark on everyone's mind. And they really got to prove something, especially in this new league. And the bar has definitely been raised joining the Big Ten defensively.
Oh, for sure. This is not the pack anymore. You don't get away with just finessing teams to death. You got to show up and play physical and play big boy football and get it done.
Yep.
Even if you're a passing team, that means you got to be good in pass pro and not, let the teams get a bunch of sacks and pressures and stuff like that throw you off.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about your head coach heading into 2024? Alex has faith in Riley to run a great offense and is hoping getting away from Grinch will be all he needs to take a big step. So says he has a lot of confidence in the head coach, and that's good to hear. I know I wouldn't say all USC fans are in that camp right now, but it's good to hear that a lot of fans are still thinking, Lincoln Riley still has a really impressive track record.
Yep.
Still got the playoff bursts and the Heisman trophies and all that kind of stuff. So I see why you have faith in your coach. All right. Besides QB in your position, what position on your team can least afford injuries? And John, I'm going to have to take this out of the running next year because everybody says offensive line. And at USC, it's also true. It's already very thin, and we can't afford really any major injury there. And I would agree with them, but it's wild. There's just a limit to the amount of 300-pound dancing bears that there are in the world.
It's true. It's true. But, they're in some teams, and, unfortunately for USC, it's even more apparent. And teams like that need that, especially pass pro teams. And I'm a little nervous there, man. I think USC fans have every reason to be a little scared.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be really interesting to see how they perform up front. I'm curious this reshuffled O-line, how that's going to go. We'll talk more about that a little bit later too. Yep. How well is your team set up for the short and long term in the new big? Short term is kind of undecided since there's so many new additions to the defensive staff, but I have hope they can make some good progress in the short term. Long term, I think it looks good if we can retain the staff and build on recruiting. I think our outstanding athleticism on the perimeter will be enough to overwhelm quite a few teams, and that's true. USC always has skill players that will make they're like a hypercharged Maryland.
Yeah.
Maryland's always got speed on the edge, no matter whether they're good, bad, or indifferent. Mm-hmm. And USC is like, I would say, an even elevated version of that, athletically wise.
Like Maryland, not much of an offensive line. So
generally not.
Yeah.
But that will have to change in the Big Ten for sure. And last question, what will constitute a successful season and how well are you set up for that? 9-3 is successful to me, says Alex, since it's a tough schedule. 8-4 would also be okay, but not great. I think the potential is there for 9-3, but there's way too much unknown at QB, wide receiver, and on defense to be sure of that. Hopeful, but unsure overall, which I think are all very fair sentiments.
Sure.
All right. Thoughts, John? Let's talk. Offense. Caleb Williams was arguably the best player, not just in, not just on his team or in the league last year, but in college football the last couple of years. And he will be missed. He won a Heisman Trophy in 2022. He was the number 1 overall pick in last year's NFL draft. Guys like that do not grow on trees.
No.
That said, Miller Moss was spectacular in the bowl game, threw 6 touchdown passes in the process. He's been in the program for 3 seasons, knows the offense inside and out. He'll be the guy unless he falters early, because USC brought in UNLV QB transfer Jaden Maeva, who's a more dynamic athlete at that QB position. So if Moss struggles early, do we see Riley go to the bench to find an offensive spark? I would guess not. I also just don't think Moss is going to struggle early. I think the USC offense is going to be fine. Yeah. I think the Lincoln Riley offenses do what they do, and we can kind of expect them to have a lot of excellence.
I think the offense overall will be okay. I am interested to see, like we've already touched on, how they'll deal with the pass rush coming from these defensive or these Big Ten defensive lines and linebackers coming into play. And maybe early on, they'll be able to hold up, but as the season progresses, if you lose some of that depth, or even throughout the games, by the time you hit the end of the third quarter, are they gassed? And are they able to continue to hold up and protect your quarterback? Can you give them enough time? It might not be as many home run plays as USC is used to seeing. There might be a lot more dink and dunk down the field, some short pass plays, which work. They can work. Absolutely. There's no reason you can't find success and win games that way. But that might be a strategy that you might have to get used to seeing, because your quarterback's not going to have the amount of time in the pocket that he might be used to. And you're dealing with bigger, stronger, faster defensemen across the board. So,
and Miller Moss isn't the kind of athlete that Caleb Williams was either. Like, he's not going to be able to dance around and get away from pressure for 10 seconds whenever he wants to. Like, he's not like that's a cheat code, and he's not that kind of player.
Yep. So that's something I'm going to be keeping an eye out. But other than, as far as skill position though, sky's the limit, man. They're incredible. I think they're going to be able to throw the ball all over the field. Although I will say, I am still questioning. I'm just not sure. I got to see it. I'm not saying good or bad. Their running game. Can they have a balanced attack? I'm not entirely sold that their backfield is going to be able to provide that to any extreme, I guess, when it comes to Big Ten conference play. I think that they might be okay, but will they be able to take some of the pressure off the quarterback? And you're going to need to. So that's something else I'm going to be looking for.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because they are depending on Mississippi State transfer Woody Marks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm somewhat skeptical of Marks. He was fine at Mississippi State, but he wasn't anything to write home about. I think, his average rush was fine. Like, okay, it was okay. The good news is he has pretty good hands. He can catch passes out of the backfield. The bad news is he's not a burner at all.
Yeah.
And, USC is built on having a bunch of burners. So I'm surprised that he's the best that USC could do at running back. And maybe he surprises me, right? Maybe he's better than I think he is. But based on what I've seen, I'm surprised that he's going to be the bell cow, and that surprised they don't have anybody else better on the roster.
Well, and again, and I know, you talked about this about being something that we might have to remove even to discussion, but with the offensive lineman, it still comes down to the offensive line, whether it's passing the ball or running the ball. Can they open up lanes for their running back at all? You're going against monsters on the other side.
They're going to throw the ball so well. They should be able to run the ball some, just based on how well they throw it,
Mm-hmm.
But can they do it consistently? Can they grind it out when they need to? Can they extend drives, and how do they do in short yardage and all that kind of stuff? Because they expect them to be great. And, if Woody Marks is the guy, who's the backup running back? Is it Quentin Joyner? Is it Amarion Peterson or Brian Jackson? because that hierarchy, you need multiple backs in the Big
Yeah.
Ten to be productive. So somebody's going to have to emerge. And that's going to be something I'm paying attention to early in the season to see who besides, Woody Marks can come in and maybe give the offense a little more pop than Marks has.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be fun. I think that they're going to definitely be able to light some people up, and there's going to be a lot of fireworks as we're used to seeing at USC. But there was also, and I got hopefully their defense will look a lot better. I think their secondary, from everything I'm hearing and things I'm seeing, I think they're going to be pretty good at DB. Pretty solid actually. I'm pretty confident in that. But again, defensive line. Hopefully their linebackers can help them out as well because they're going to have to. But if let's say their defense does step up and it becomes good, it doesn't have to be great, but it's good. Then,
top like 65 in the country.
Yeah. This team is
respectable-ish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then I could definitely see 9-3 with this team with that. But if the defense or if both line of scrimmage, if like the defensive line and the offensive line are having a ton of issues all season long, I mean, you could be looking at 7-5.
Absolutely.
So it's not impossible. So yeah, that it's a bit of a high variance team for sure.
Yeah, I'm fascinated about USC, man. I think we're going to find so much out about Lincoln Riley and where he's at in his development as a head coach to see what he can put together this season. Because, I mean, you look at defense. He took Dan Linton from UCLA, who was great at UCLA. He took Matt Entz, the head coach of NDSU, to be his linebackers coach, assistant head coach. Doug Belk from Houston and Eric Henderson from the LA Rams. So he went out and picked, his own all-star cast of assistant coaches, got them to SoCal. Yep. And now, is he willing? We've said this before. Is Lincoln Riley willing to do the things you need to do to help a defense out? Will he slow the tempo up sometimes? You want to be able to control the ball a little more maybe and give your defense time to rest, not have them be out there, after a three and out, where you took 30 seconds off the clock because you threw 3 passes and they were incomplete, Yep. Is he willing to tackle differently in practice and play more physically in practice, more physically than air raid teams typically play? Like, these things we don't know, but I think we're going to see them on the field.
Yeah. Well, and how are they going to respond to teams that do grind it out, that do consistently just run the ball at you down your throat for most of the, I'd say probably 75% of the game.
Utah teams that'll Utah you.
That will Utah you.
Big Ten has plenty of teams that'll Utah you, and USC had a lot of trouble with Utah.
Precisely. A lot of trouble. Teams that will slow the game down and don't let you play your game. That is what might happen. And is Lincoln Riley going to be able to adjust to that? And it'll be interesting, man. It's exciting for sure. Seeing these two different styles come into play in this conference.
Yeah. My thought is that Lincoln wants to stay up tempo because what Danton Lynn said is he said, quote, "We want to attack the ball off the quarterback, off the ball carrier, and in the air," close quote. So USC wants to force turnovers to complement its high scoring offense. That approach can lead to some really high scoring games where you blow teams out and score 40, 50, 60 points. But it can also lead to high variance games where you lose the turnover battle and the other team takes advantage, and all of a sudden you lose to teams that you think you're better than.
Yep.
Because of that aggressive kind of going for turnovers approach. So that's really interesting to me. UCL or USC doesn't have the same level of playmakers up front probably that UCLA had last year. A lot, man, comes down to Bear Alexander. I mean, opposing coaches say that he is a game wrecker when he wants to be. And more often than not, he didn't want to be. So is he going to be a guy who realizes, hey, if I have a big year, I can get drafted at a really high rate and, maybe add some money to what I was going to get otherwise? Or is he just thinking, I'm going to make the NFL off my potential alone? I'm going to coast. I'm not that worried about it.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it comes down to Bear Alexander and where his head's at. And I would hope that in year 2 in this system, I guess it's a different system. In year 2, though, that he would give a little more consistent effort.
Well, who knows? Maybe playing, week in and week out, some higher level competition might motivate him to do so
Yeah,
out of necessity.
for sure. All right, let's talk schedule quick.
Okay.
We have USC. We have the neutral site opener September 1st. I think that's a Sunday night against LSU in Las Vegas. Then they host Utah State. Then they're at Michigan, host Wisconsin, at Minnesota, host Penn State, at Maryland, Rutgers, at Washington, Nebraska, at UCLA, Notre Dame. So that is a pretty tough schedule. They don't get Ohio State or Oregon, so they caught a good break there. But considering that they scheduled LSU and Notre Dame in the non-conference, that's a tough schedule. And that slate in the middle there, I mean, when they go at Michigan, Wisconsin, at Minnesota, Penn State.
And Nebraska's defense?
Oh, yeah. And Rutgers defense?
Yeah.
I mean, those are some physical Big Ten FU football teams.
Yep.
So, man, I'm fascinated. I've honestly always wondered how USC would do in a league like the Big Ten, and whether a team that is built like that, under Pete Carroll, they were such a power team. But since Pete Carroll left, they've been a finesse team, right?
Yeah.
And how does the finesse team do in the Big Ten? Oregon, it's kind of funny. Oregon used to be the finesse team, and now they're the power team.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's why it's interesting how programs shape and change over time.
Well, I mean, you saw that with Ohio State. Now they're trying to move back to becoming more of a power team. I mean, they've always had more of a punch in both ways, but but even they're realizing like, oh yeah, we got to move it back the other direction a little bit more. So yeah, it'll be fun, man. I mean, that schedule is exciting for us. I don't know how good I'd feel about it as a USC fan. In the know, I don't know.
I don't know. If you're a USC fan, you're thinking we don't play Ohio State, we don't play Oregon. I feel like roll the dice game on, and I think so much comes out to can you beat LSU in that first game?
True.
Because if they beat LSU, then they'll be 2-0. Because if they lose to LSU, you're not walking into Ann Arbor and winning probably.
Yeah.
Like that's probably not happening, especially if you lose to LSU before that. So you don't want to be 1-2. You want to be 2-0, riding into Michigan, feeling like they have a shot because the defense is better and the offense is doing big things.
Yep.
So I think we're going to know right away with USC one way or the other where they're at.
True. Yeah.
And that'll be really exciting. And it'll be interesting to see between USC. It's an interesting test case between USC and LSU. Both teams had no defense last year and Heisman winning quarterbacks. Can they come back this year without Heisman winning quarterbacks and be enough better on defense to make up for the fact that they don't have Heisman winning quarterbacks anymore?
Yeah, it's wild, dude. That'll be fun. Yeah, it's exciting. It's an exciting year to be a Trojan fan, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And Miller Moss, man, he's a good story. He hung around for like 3 years, waited his turn. So like you always root for like guys like that to succeed.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. All right. Shall we move on?
Let's do that.
Okay, we are going on now to Eugene to talk about the Oregon Ducks. And our Oregon contributor is at @DeviousDuck_, which is a great name, and is Austin. First question. Now that you've seen how your team did in the portal and how spring went, what's your expectation for this season and what is your projected record for 2024? 11-1, and the loss is at Michigan. Being a Final Four team in the playoffs should be our expectation, as the roster was constructed to have depth for a title run. And that's fair.
All right.
That's where Oregon's at. Oregon went crazy in the portal, as we'll talk about later. But yeah, question 2. Rank the following position groups and how strong you think they are comparatively. And he went QB, RB, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, secondary, special teams. Which players are best for each position group? Wide receivers, Tez Johnson and Evan Stewart, the Texas A&M transfer. QB, Dylan Gabriel, and the 5-star backup, because Oregon has a 5-star backup quarterback in Dante Moore, which is, got to be nice. And DL Mateo Ugalele also plays linebacker. Jordan Birch and Derek Harmon, the Michigan State transfer. Josh Connerly Jr. on the O-line. Ajon Cornelius and Matthew Bedford is an experienced transfer from Indiana. Running backs Jordan James and Noah Whittington. Linebacker Jeffrey Bassa and Justin Jacobs. Secondary Jabbar Mohammed, the transfer from Washington. Kobe Savage, the Kansas State transfer. Jaleel Florence and Brandon Johnson from Duke. So tight end Terrence Ferguson and Kenyon Sadiq. Special teams kicker Atticus Sappington, the Oregon State transfer. So the first thing you notice about Oregon is they have a lot of transfers in key spots.
Yeah.
They went all in. Phil Knight and that Oregon NIL collective went all in on a national. Ohio State's not the only team that went all in on a national title this year.
No.
Oregon is all in on winning a national title this year.
Yep.
And that's a really exciting place to be as a program. And frankly, I'm a little jealous.
I am too. That must be nice to have that kind of money.
Oh, absolutely. Good for them.
Yep.
Which players are going to play this fall who are unproven or proven to be questionable? Secondary as a whole was bad last season, so it remains to be seen if this group, which consists of a lot of transfers, can be productive and stay strong through any injuries. I think Jaleel has a lot to prove if he wants to keep his spot, as they brought in some highly touted DBs in the portal and also have multiple freshmen and sophomores ready to get PT. In addition, there's a lot of hype with Evan Stewart, but they want to see if he can live up to that potential. A lot of Aggies said he had a slump his sophomore season. Could be biased, of course, but they dealt with injury and a backup QB. How did the transfer portal go? Well, we know how it went. It went great. They dominated. Oregon crushed it. Brought in guys. We already talked about a lot of the guys they brought in, so I won't name them again. Which members of the coaching staff are in prove-it mode this year? Will these coaches be fired if things don't go well for their position groups? Secondary coach, only way he get fired is if they're exposed through the pass, but they can't see that happening in the big. The secondary needs to be better this season. I mean, those Big Ten offenses might be better at passing than you think they are. Is the only thing I'll say. Now, I think Oregon's going to be great. Don't get me wrong. Like, spoiler alert, I think Oregon's going to be awesome. But yeah, there's the Big Ten passing offenses are better probably than you think they are.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about your head coach heading into 2024? Devious Duck feels very excited, says he's shown that they can come prepared every game, but has some things to prove in those close game decision-making situations and must beat Washington as he's 0-3 versus UW. Besides QB, in your opinion, what position on your team can least afford injuries? Says linebackers. How well is your team set up for the short and long term in the new big? Should be a contender in most years, especially with the portal. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Long-term success will depend on being a tough team in the trenches with the adjustment to Big Ten teams. I would agree with that as well.
Yep.
Last question. What will constitute a successful season and how well are you set up for that? Successful season would be winning 2 college football playoff games, in his opinion. But the team is absolutely a title contender, so it would feel like we didn't reach our full potential if they don't win it all. Roster seen as top 4 by most people in the college football community. And that's all true.
Yeah.
And let's get to thoughts. Dan Lanning said at media days, I think maybe the Big Ten's approach may have to change some for what Oregon is bringing as well. And other coaches have said that, and they've all been wrong. But Oregon might be the first team to enter the Big Ten since Penn State to immediately make good on that kind of statement. I still think it's foolish that he made the statement, but I think Oregon is good enough to back him up on that.
I think so too. And we all know Penn State showed up and very well prepared, but they still were not the Penn State that the fans were used to because they were now playing in the Big Ten. So their
No, that's
record
true.
didn't show that. So now I'm not saying Oregon can't absolutely have a shot at winning the Big Ten conference. It's first season first season as a member, but that's some you're just bringing some bad juju on you, man. Like that is just not
Yeah.
something you want to say as a head coach in this
No.
conference. It does not bode well generally. So watch out. If it all blows up in your face, Oregon Duck fans, you know who to blame. It's it's just the
Yeah.
way it is. Just talk to Husker fans, man. They'll tell you all about it. So
Yeah. Although
yeah.
it's a little different, as Oregon had the 3rd ranked recruiting class last year and the 3rd ranked transfer portal class.
Yeah.
So the money Oregon is throwing around is just
It
crazy.
is.
It's
No.
crazy.
And just because I said all that doesn't mean I don't think Oregon absolutely is going to be incredible this season. I'm just saying,
No, we're being clear. We think Oregon's going to be,
yeah.
Spoiler alert, Oregon's going to be way, way up there in the Big Ten title hunt. And that means they're going to be way up there in the national title hunt.
Mm-hmm. I would just leave it at that now. Like Dan Lanning said it. Cool. It's out there. Now just don't talk about it ever again. Just leave it alone.
No, that could, you don't want Dylan Gabriel to suddenly get the yips or something.
No.
But he probably won't, because Dylan Gabriel has started 49 games at UCF in Oklahoma, was first team All Big 12 last year. Dude can sling it. Mm-hmm. And Oregon has another elite quarterback to do damage this year after Bo Nix last year. And I'll say this about Dylan Gabriel, John. He can throw it downfield a little better than Bo Nix could. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see more intermediate and longer passes, like taking shots downfield, than the Ducks did last year. Because Bo Nix was all about the short passes with accuracy and the yards after the catch. That was the whole offense. And I just think Dylan Gabriel brings a different dimension throwing the ball down the field.
I totally agree. I think he's going to be incredible. I think he's absolutely going to be in the Heisman race. Terrifying to watch.
Yeah, I think he has a better chance to win it than, he's better than Bo Nix is. He's better than, let's be real. He's better.
Yep.
Bo Nix was very good. Dylan Gabriel is better.
Mm-hmm.
And if he somehow gets hurt or falters, former 5-star recruit Dante Moore came over from UCLA to be the backup. So, man, that Nike money is fantastic, is what that is. Because for a guy like Dante Moore to say, I'm going to take another year and sit out, that's like Arch Manning sitting out at Texas, man. You know? It is. It is.
Yeah, it is.
It's that kind of level thing. So, very cool. Nice work if you can get it.
Absolutely, man. Wow. I don't know. I have no words. I envy you.
Yep. All right, let's move right on. Running back Jordan James is back after 759 yards last year, complimenting Bucky Irving, former Gopher transfer in the days before we had a collective that could pay enough money to keep guys like Bucky Irving. Glad those are behind us largely.
Mm-hmm.
Wide receiver Tez Johnson is back after setting records last season. Trayshawn Holden, Gary Bryant caught balls last year. They're back as well. Sophomore Kyle Casper and redshirt Frosh. Jurian Dickey is a former 5-star prospect. So it'll be interesting to see who emerges across from Tez Johnson. They're going to have to figure that out, sooner than later if they want to have the kind of year they want to have. And then the defense, man, they've got – oh, sorry. Go on with what you were going to say.
I was just going to say, what is life like after Bucky Irving?
Yeah, that's a great question.
He was
He's a special player.
So, yeah, he was incredibly special. And I feel like I'm sure I'm sure they'll have, or who they have is going to be just fine. But, Bucky, I think, was so electric and so shifty. And, I don't know. I think that's going to be tough to replace when you don't have that kind of a guy to rely on in the backfield to turn to if things get a little tough. So take some of that pressure off. But so that's what I'm going to be looking for here. And I'm trying to just find anything wrong with this offense. So I'm not that worried, but that's
yeah, man. This offense is just special. Yeah. They bring 3 starters back on the O-line from a Joe Moore Award finalist. and have great tackles in Connerly and Cornelius. 2 new starters will be the guys to watch as IU transfer Matthew Bedford was a 4-year starter for the Hoosiers. He comes over, and sophomore center Iapani Lalulu is a rising star to watch. So Oregon is rock solid in starting O-line. Defense has a ton of experience led by linebackers Jeffrey Bassa and Justin Jacobs. Bassa particularly is a star and a guy to watch. He's someone who is probably going to be an All-American this year. So get ready to hear that name making tackles for Oregon. You're going to hear it all fall kind of thing. They're somewhat inexperienced on the D line after 4 of last year's top 5 DTs graduated, but man, they've recruited so well and they filled in the portal so well. And, pay attention. Jordan Birch will lead the way up front, but pay attention to Houston transfer Jamari Caldwell. Sparty transferred Derek Harmon, who tips the scales at 320 and is a monster in the middle. Try moving that man out of the way. I dare you. Wow. Good luck. So, Amari Washington, Mikhail Gardner, Terrence Green, also guys to watch up front. And then, Tyshim Johnson moves from nickel to strong safety. And then they have 4, portal DB additions. And the only question to me really on this whole team is how long, are there any stars in the defensive line, or are there just guys who are the big playmakers up front? And also how long does that secondary take to gel? Because you got a bunch of different transfers, learning a new system. Is that something that early in the year holds you back at all? And I'm really grasping at straws here, John, to try to find some kind of weakness on this team to exploit. But that's what I came up with. So,
well, that's just and you and I talked a little bit about this before we started recording. Is I have a feeling we talked a lot in last season when we talked about Michigan, mainly Michigan, Ohio State as well, but mainly Michigan, when we didn't have a lot to say. Because what was there to say when you're recapping a game where they just blow everybody out and dominate from start to finish? That's just the way it was. So it's not because we didn't want to say more about Michigan. It was just there's nothing more to say than they're amazing. They're the best team in the country. That's it. Flat out. What else? What more do you want me to put out there? So that's what I feel like we're going to be saying, having some similar situations, maybe not all the time. Maybe not to that extent, but I think there definitely will be some weeks where we're going to be I don't know what else to say. Oregon is absolutely incredible, and that's it.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention their punter, John, averaged an obscene 48.4 yards per punt last year. 48. Those are Tory Taylor numbers.
That's not fair. What?
No, it's not. And their kicker, Atticus Sappington, was 18 for 21 at Oregon State the past 2 years. And I mostly bring it up because his name is actually Atticus Sappington. All name team. Am I right?
That's amazing. That's perfect.
Where were you in To Kill a Mockingbird? Which chapter did I forget? Were you in that I forgot? Is what I want to know.
Wow. But you know what, though, Oregon fans, you are going to fall in love even more with punting now. You may not be punting a lot, but
when you do, it's going to be special.
Yes.
When you don't get a first down, imagine John being on a team that's so good that when you don't get a first down, you're like, oh man, it's good to see the punter. He's going to flip the field.
Well, and you're going to have other fans from other fan bases be like, dude, did you guys see that punt? It is absolutely
punting is winning in the 10.
Yes. So be prepared, Ducks fans, that there will be other fan bases complimenting you on what a nice punter you have. That's how it's going to go. So.
Yeah, they're going to be t-shirts. It's going to be a thing. Yeah. All right, let's look at this schedule. John, Idaho, Boise State, at Oregon State, at UCLA, Sparty. I think it's safe to say that Oregon will be a 2 or even 3 touchdown favorite in all of those games.
Yeah.
I mean, Boise State could maybe be competitive with Oregon for a while.
Maybe.
A couple quarters, maybe. but they're not gonna have enough juice to go toe to toe for 4 quarters with this Oregon juggernaut.
No.
So the first really real test for this team is gonna be when Big Ten's 800-pound gorilla, Ohio State, comes to town on October 12th. And man, that is the game of the year in the Big Ten. It just is.
Yeah. And they will be coming to town. You will see a lot. You will see a sea of scarlet and gray.
Yeah, Oregon has a proud fan base, but like it might get a little neutral sidey feeling.
A little bit.
Like, because I could see a world where Ohio State bids up the prices of the tickets and it has like 20% of the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have 20% of the crowd, you can make a lot of noise.
Yep.
I remember, no, never mind. I'm not even going there. We're all good vibes. We're no negative vibes tonight. All right. Yeah, dude. Oregon, national title contender. Absolutely. There's a possibility that Oregon and Ohio State could play 3 times. First in Eugene, second in the Big Ten title game, and third in the playoff.
Yeah.
That's on the table. I think they would do their best to keep them separate so that they wouldn't be on a collision course. But if they keep winning, as both these teams could be set up to do, we had 2 Big Ten teams in the title game last year.
Yep.
Who's to say it couldn't happen again?
Absolutely.
So that'll be interesting as well. John, this next team holds a special place in your heart.
That it does. This is one of my favorites. This is my second favorite Big Ten team at this time. Didn't used to be, but after spending years living on the East Coast, living in New York City, and then living in just across the river in New Jersey, I have a very, very soft, special place in my heart for the Rutgers Scarlet Knights.
Yes. And I know you've seen them play in Piscataway, right?
I have. I went to at least 4 or 5 games there, I believe.
Yeah, dude, that's a lot. Good for you.
It's a great stadium too. It's not, it's cute. It's not like nothing like super impressive, but like they do a good job. It's a good game. The fans are fantastic. It's a cool atmosphere. It's solid.
Yeah. And our contributor for Rutgers is at Ben K Digital. So on Twitter. So give him a follow. He's great when it comes to all things Rutgers and college football. And we really appreciate you helping us out with this. And we appreciate all of our contributors helping us out today.
Absolutely.
All right. Now that you've seen how your team did in the portal and how spring went, what's your expectation for this season and what's your projected record for 2024? The headlining news for the 2024 season ended up primarily being the 2025 class, as Shiano went on a recruiting tear. But for the current roster, the biggest and maybe only surprise was Gavin Wimsatt transferring, something he thought would happen anyways. Callie McManus won the QB position outright, which doesn't give him a whole lot of confidence, but they're not going to be a passing team anyways. True. They got a stud FCS wide receiver in the portal and Demir Miller, as well as some guys on the defensive side, but nothing otherworldly. So the initial projections haven't changed much. The schedule is incredibly favorable, so I'm going with a 9-3, 6-3 record. Rank the following position groups and how strong you think they are comparatively. Monungai and Brown will be a top 5 rushing duo in the nation, has Arby's number 1. D-line, special teams, secondary, O-line, linebackers, wide receivers, and tight ends, QB. And I would agree that that's a good breakdown of where Rutgers is at. Which player is the best at each position group? Monungai is a clear number 1 as a running back, but his percentage might dip if Sam Brown is healthy because he'll get a lot of carries as well. He's a really good player too. Wide receiver Demir Miller has the best stats to back it up at the FCS level, and Ian Strong should be their primary red zone guy as he's 6'5". So you're thinking a little, back shoulder fade, jump ball kind of thing. Got to do that. All right, tight end incoming Frosh. Ben Black is a wide receiver tight end, so they may opt to put him at tight end. So that's interesting to see maybe an incoming Frosh making a little noise. D-line Aaron Lewis, linebacker Tyreen Powell, DB Robert Longerbeam. 4, which players who are going to play this fall are unproven or proven to be questionable? And, he hits the nail on the head, I'd say, and says the biggest question is if Ethan Kaliakmanis can be an upgrade over Gavin Wimsatt, which really held back the offense. He has a really solid foundation of weapons. And on the defensive side, Longerbeam isn't unproven, but he no longer has Max Melton as a counterpart and will have to shoulder the brunt of the DB plays back there. And it's been said before, can Sam Brown stay healthy and take 30% of the carries? That'll be really important so that Monangai doesn't get run into the ground.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
How'd the transfer portal go? Which transfer portal players will make the biggest impact this season? Demir Miller was a huge get because they need wide receiver production. Ethan Kaliakmanis, the mediocre QB from Mini, their words, not mine. Although I endorse them. But better suited for the offense than Wimsatt. Ooh, we'll talk about that. Malcolm Ray was a big DL reinforcement from FSU. Which members of the coaching staff are in proven mode this year? Will these coaches be fired if things don't go well for their position groups? Ben doesn't think any are in proven mode, especially on defense, but OC Kirk Soraka will be the focus of criticism if things don't go well. And at $1.5 million a year, I think Kirk should be the focus of criticism if the offense doesn't go well. He wanted Kaliakmanis. That's the quarterback he wanted in the portal. He had a previous relationship with him. He thinks he can fix him. So if Kaliakmanis can't get the job done, it is fully on Kirk Soraka. I'm with that.
100%.
How do you feel about your head coach heading into 2024? Love Shianu and always have. Master recruiter, defensive guru, but hasn't been able to get a signature win in his second stint, which is fair. Obviously it was a lot easier when Rutgers was in the Big East to get big wins, but they haven't had that kind of national success since he came back to Rutgers a second time. Besides QB, in your opinion, what position on your team can least afford injuries? Defensive back, he says. With Max Melton gone, the DBs are a bit thin, and Rutgers is not a high-powered offense, so the secondary cannot afford to be shorthanded and allow long scoring plays. Yeah, I think that's a really good play. I think Rutgers starting defensive backs, we like all of them. All 5 of them are really good. But yeah, what's the depth behind that? That's a question.
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, if Longerbeam goes down, I mean that'll be just a massive blow. So hopefully he can stay healthy throughout the season because he's amazing, man. I mean that guy, he's punishing.
He's a force to be reckoned with. There's no question about it. How well is your team set up for the short and long term in the new big conference? Great outlook this year and a historically great class coming in next year. Should be a middle of the pack, top 7 team for a few years, they feel like. And that's good expectations to have. Good for Rutgers to be at a place where they can have those expectations. Like, this program has been in some dark areas, and it's fun to see Rutgers on the come up a little bit.
Yeah, and do not downplay how they not that you are, but that people shouldn't be downplaying how well they're recruiting, especially this year. That's a big deal. So,
and New Jersey's a good state to recruit to.
Heck yeah, it is. Absolutely. And that's what it pays to be in the Big Ten. Even if you're a perceived, bottom dweller like Rutgers has been for a long time, look at what you can do now that you're in the Big Ten conference with the kind of money that's coming in. So,
yeah,
it pays.
Absolutely. A lot of what will constitute a successful season and how well are you set up for that? Ben says they have, big capital letters, have to win 8 games minimum. They have so many returning starters and one of the most favorable schedules. They really do. We're going to talk about that next. After we talk, we'll do thoughts and then that. Time to stop any excuses, take the next step. Shianu also needs a signature win, which would be at home versus Wisconsin. Boom. Ben's calling his shot.
Get it done.
Yeah.
Yes.
You heard it. He put it out in the universe. Ben says at home versus Wisconsin. That's going to be the upset. Right. I'm going to bookmark that, John. I'm going to come back and look at that. And if it happens, We're gonna tweet out and say Ben K Digital had it first.
That's right. Rutgers is my favorite red and white team in the Big Ten. So I'm just
there.
saying.
You go.
Yeah.
I like that. That's good. That's a good distinction. Right on. All right, thoughts.
I gotta agree, man. I think this year has to be it where they seem to break through. And breaking through for Rutgers would be winning 8 games or more. And it would be definitely getting themselves, I think, out of that cellar that they've been living in. That the perception on the national level that they're just this bottom dwelling team or a program that they're not willing to make the changes necessary to rise up. Blah 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 stuff. I think I even read on Twitter today from somebody else commenting from a different conference about the addition of, I think, Miami or something on realignment or something. They think the Big Ten doesn't want another Rutgers. Well, look, if you get into the Big Ten, no one, I think, is necessarily, if you're willing to invest, you are not going to be stuck at the bottom. And it looks like
No, look at Northwestern. It's the hardest job in the conference,
Yep.
and they've had plenty of success over the years.
Yep.
Plenty
so
of it.
It's all possible. I think Shiano is amazing. I love him as a coach there. He fits the culture. He fits what that university is, the state. I mean, Jersey loves this guy.
Oh yeah, he looks like he's from Jersey.
Oh, dude, yeah. I mean, he's through and through, man. I believe Shiano. I mean, is that, I don't know if it's Greek or Italian or what? I got to look it up. I should know.
But you know what? It sounds good to the fans.
Yes, so they love it. But I think he's got all the pieces, man. Other than possibly quarterback. But if Ethan can just be serviceable and get out of his own way, this team potentially could win more. I could see, there is not I don't expect this, so don't this is not what I'm expecting, but this team could potentially win 10 games this season.
All right, let's put a pin in that and talk a little bit more broad scale thoughts before we go schedule.
Yes.
Cool?
Sure. I'm just excited.
Right. No, I love it, man. Getting pumped about Rutgers. I love it. Getting pumped as the podcast progresses. That's why I put Rutgers last, so I knew you'd be on for it.
That's my chance.
All right. Rutgers has great defensive end pass rushers in Aaron Lewis and Wesley Bailey back. Depth is questionable after backup Renee Kong transferred to Louisville. So that's something to pay attention to. What's it like? How are they developing guys there? FSU transfer Malcolm Ray's a run stopper in the middle. Keontae Hamilton's expected to step up this year. Rutgers' best linebacker, Tyree Powell's recovering from a torn Achilles, and there's no guarantee he'll be ready to start the season. In fact, I think he probably will not be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big deal. They could really use him back. He's a special player. They do bring back Mohamed Toure, though. And how many times did we call his name last year?
Oh, yeah, dude. I mean, we were talking about him constantly.
All the time.
Yeah, yeah.
He had 93 tackles last year and 9.5 tackles for loss.
Mm-hmm.
That's impressive stuff. So the secondary, they lost Max Melton in the draft, but they have Longer Beam, Eric Rogers at corner, and then they got Flip Dixon and Shaquan Lloyd and Desmond Igbinison at safety. So the depth is not proven, but those starters, man. And Rutgers, let me just say one more time, this whole you taking Flip Dixon thing from us, like I was okay with Ethan. I was happy for him to leave. But Flip Dixon, that hurt.
Yes.
That one hurt. And especially when that's the one. Yeah, we'll get to Minnesota in a later episode, but that's like the one big question mark for Minnesota, and Flip Dixon is, it hurts. It hurts a little bit.
Yeah. But I'm so happy he's doing so well. Like he's clearly where he's at, But yes, I mean, do I wish he was still in the Gophers? Absolutely. But
yeah, that was someday when we talk about we'll talk about dirty recruiting, and there's an interesting recruiting. I won't say dirty, but I'll say there's an interesting recruiting story when it comes to Flip Dixon and how he ended up leaving Minnesota in the first place. But we'll save that for another day.
Sure.
Special teams, Jai Patel returns at place kicker after going 15 for 18 last year in a solid effort. And to solve their punting woes, Rutgers brings in Australian Jacob with a K Anderson. He has not yet been named the starter, though, as he just arrived this summer. So that's something to watch. Offensive line will be really good on the left side of the line. We'll see how good they are on the right side of the line. They need some guys to step up. Left side with tackle Colin Pierce, left guard Brian Felter, center Gus Zelinskas were starters last season, so they should be pretty good there. Tyler Needham will be the right tackle, and Reggie Sutton will play wherever they need him as he has position flexibility. Ohio transfer Shedrick Rhodes will also compete as well. The Rutgers needs to figure it out up front. This team was not good in pass pro last year, period. Like, sure. Yes, Wimsatt wasn't good throwing the ball, but they also weren't good protecting him at all. Mm-hmm. And that was a problem. They can't be one-dimensional and just run this year. They have to have a little more of a passing game if they're going to, win more games than they did last year, I think. At wide receiver, Rutgers got a potential star in Monmouth receiver Demir Miller, who was mentioned before. He had nearly 1,300 yards receiving at the FCS level last year, which is nothing to sniff at. The hope is that he can recreate that for Rutgers. So he will play with receiver Christian Dremel, who had 468 yards receiving last year on 36 catches. These are all the good things. Rutgers has a lot to be positive about. I think Rutgers is going to have a really good season. Ethan Kaliakmanis is a problem at quarterback.
Yes.
He is a problem. And here's my concern, okay? Gavin Wimsatt was not a good thrower. He completed 48% of his passes last year, but he was an exceptional runner. And him standing next to Kyle Monungai made it so you didn't know who was running the ball. You knew Rutgers was running, but you didn't know if it was the quarterback or the running back. And having Wimsatt to keep defenses honest opened up lanes for Monungai. So Kirk Shiraka made the bet that he could downgrade at running ability, but that Ethan would be enough of an upgrade as a passer to open up the offense and make up for the fact that they don't have a runner next to Monungai anymore. And it better work, because if the passing game doesn't work this year, defenses are going to be laser focused on Monungai, because Ethan Kaliakmanis is not good at design runs. He's not. He can scramble a little bit. He's pretty athletic, but he is not a guy you can run on design runs and have it work out much of the time. It's just not gonna.
No, I mean, he doesn't look as pretty running the ball as Gavin Wimsatt did. Let's put it that way.
No, Ethan's got a little bit of a scared deer kind of thing quality to his running.
Yeah, very hesitant, not a lot of confidence.
Timid. Yep. Yeah. So there's that. And I just think that, here's the good news. Kirk Shiraka, now there's the headset rule where you can talk to the quarterback until there's 15 seconds left on the play clock. So Kirk Shiraka can tell Ethan whom to throw to pre-snap and quick get him on the line of scrimmage, have him snap the ball and do what he told him to do. And I think that will help Ethan. I do. I think Ethan, he was a 53% passer last year. I could see him getting up as high as 57, 58%. But he's not good with the ball. He's not clutch. And I just don't believe that he has the mechanics to be a consistent passer. He throws everything 100 miles an hour, and he doesn't know how to put touch on the ball. And honestly, just never seemed like he was really interested in improving and learning how to put touch on the ball.
Well, and just becoming his own worst enemy. That was the thing that drove me insane, and you could tell it drove PJ insane last year too, when he would just get in his head, and the game was over. The game was over. But when you saw Ethan, start losing his mindset, that was when you knew we weren't going to come back. We weren't going to win this game. That was it. So it's not that the potential isn't there to be better. Maybe Kirk Shiraka has the ability to get something out of him that, PJ and company couldn't. But it's definitely a little bit of a wild card here.
Yeah, I was flat out shocked that Rutgers couldn't do better in the portal than this.
Yeah.
I mean, flat out shocked. I thought Shianu could pull something, and it's almost a shame if this holds Rutgers back from having the kind of year they're poised to have. Because I just think Ethan, you just can't count on him from game to game. He'll have good games. Games. There'll be times when he shows up and when he hits an early deep ball or something and he gets a little confidence and he gets that momentum going, and he will impress you and he'll win you a games here or there. But he will also lose you games.
Yeah, or he'll look incredible for the first half and then just fall to pieces, and it's very frustrating. So But this is, again, I mean, it's so funny that, just talking about Kirk Shiraka, like, I don't know what kind of sales pitch he gave Shiano, but like, to get eighth in there, but
Right?
he must have sold him on something, man. So
I don't even know. He must have showed him the Wisconsin game and the Nebraska second half and been like, I can get him to do this all the time.
That's it. Yeah.
And
I don't
maybe
know
he
what else.
can.
Maybe.
Maybe he can. Kirk
Yep.
Shiraka, PJ Fleck once called Kirk Shiraka a quarterback whisperer. And with Tanner Morgan, he was.
Yeah. He got the best out of Tanner, that's for sure. Yeah.
And so maybe, with an upgrade at receiver, my question is Demir Miller really an upgrade at receiver or not? Like 1,300 yards was really good, but it was at the FCS. Is he a number one receiver? Because they need him to be not just an option, not just a guy, not a guy who gets 4, 5, 600 yards. They need a guy who can come out and get 1,000 yards receiving this year and be a threat on the outside every single snap that he plays. They need him to be that kind of guy if they're going to accomplish the things they want to accomplish.
Yeah. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. And like you said, it will be incredibly disappointing if like that's the thing that held them back from having just a fantastic
right
game. It really would be disappointing.
Because should we talk schedule?
Yeah.
All right. This schedule, folks, is as good as it'll ever get in the new Big Ten Conference.
Mm-hmm.
So we start out with Howard. Okay. Should win that one going away. Then you've got Akron, who went 2-10 in the MAC last year. After that, you're at Virginia Tech. They were 7-6 last year, and they have a nice quarterback in Kyron Drones. But then after that, you're home against Washington, who's rebuilding. So it's a great time to play Washington, and Washington has to fly across the whole country to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good advantage. Then you're at Nebraska, Wisconsin. So those are two tough games in a row. But then you have UCLA. So that's a good get-right game. Then you're at USC, host Minnesota, and then to finish the year, at Maryland, Illinois, at Sparty. And Maryland and Sparty are both, I mean, I would say Maryland's rebuilding. I'm saying that. Yeah. I think they're rebuilding after Talia and losing that whole offensive line. I think it's a rebuild. I'm not saying Loxley can't do it. I think he can do it. But I think it's a rebuild. So, what's funny, John? That still is a tough schedule. Even the easy Big Ten schedules are really tough now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's as easy a Big Ten schedule as you'll ever have. And you still have in the middle a part where you go at Nebraska, Wisconsin, UCLA, at USC, Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. That's tough.
That's not a walk in the park. And if Athan can't complete passes, that's going to be real tough.
Yeah.
Because you can get by UCLA and Michigan States and the Michigan States of the world, just and maybe Illinois just running the ball.
Yeah.
You can get by those. But I just think that those middle tier Big Ten teams, you're going to need a passing threat to open up running lanes for Monangai, or else those teams are eventually going to figure out how to slow him down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, man. I mean, I think it just there's a lot riding this year, and them putting all their eggs in one basket with Athan Kaliakmanis and trusting that Kirk Shiraka is going to be able to find whatever it is he saw in him in the first place, which we saw like you said, the Wisconsin game and the second half of the Nebraska game, what the potential is. And I think they could. I think there is a road to, for me, if they don't win 8 games, I'll be disappointed.
Count them off, man. Howard, Akron, Washington, UCLA, at Maryland, at Sparty, Illinois. Those are all games you should win.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the team you think you are, then those are all games you should be able to win. And again, for Washington fans, for our new West Coast fans, we already previewed you. We think your program's amazing. You're just not going to be amazing this year.
I was going to say I was going to give Rutgers that as a win as well at this point. That's
Washington, yeah.
Yeah, Washington, yeah.
Yeah, I'm giving Rutgers that as a win.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I do think Washington is in a full rebuild.
Yep.
And that's not, again, I think Jed Fish can do it. He did it at Arizona. So I think you'll get there. I just don't think it's going to be this year.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, I'm excited about this Rutgers Scarlet Knights team. And I think, and man, I can't help but think, as the person I am, November 9th, that Minnesota game right before that closing stretch, that could have a lot on the line for both teams.
Yeah.
Because, Rutgers has an easier closing stretch, but they might be trying to get to that, 8 or 9 games or whatever, and might need that game to get there. And Minnesota has a tough closing stretch, and Minnesota absolutely needs to get that Rutgers win, before they end the season. Penn State at Wisconsin.
Yeah. Then you have the Ethan Kelly McManus revenge game. You don't, like, how is that is he going to show out, or is he going to fall apart?
Or is he going to turtle? Because I think they're both on the table.
Absolutely.
I could see him just being like having the game circled, doing all his homework, crossing his I's, dotting his T's, come out just slinging darts, you know? And then, like, even though he got crushed by USC the week before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting. Oh, goodness. John. They even have a bye week to get ready for Minnesota.
Whoa. I did not look at it close enough to see that.
That's going to be a tough game. That's going to be tough.
All right.
It's going to be game on. Kirk Shiraka with off a bye week. Man, we've seen him pull some good stuff off bye weeks.
Yep. Dang.
I'll never forget the 2019 Penn State game coming off a bye week. And he dialed up, he caught them in a corner blitz and dialed up a deep shot and got Rashad Bateman to start that game. And it was on, So he can do that. And Shianu is going to be wanting to go for blood, because he's going to want to knock out and get ahead, because both Fleck and Shianu are the kinds of coaches who want to play with a lead desperately. Desperately.
Yep.
So you can expect that game to have a lot of intensity. There's a lot of shared blood, a lot of coaches who coach in one place and they're now in the other, players who started at Minnesota and ended up at Rutgers. It's going to be a big game.
For sure, man. It's exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right. I mean, I think we did it, John.
I think so too. I think we nailed it pretty well here tonight. Hopefully next week there will be some more interesting information or news going on here in the conference, or none at all. That'd be cool. I mean, maybe.
I hope it's just ball stuff.
Yes.
I hope it's just ball stuff, and it's all like good stuff and not injuries.
No drama, just good things, exciting
no drama,
stuff.
No practice injuries, none of that stuff.
Yes, that would be great.
Guys getting ready to play football, feeling good, making plays. We want the good vibes, because we want to see the Big Ten come out and have a really strong out-of-conference season to prove its conference superiority. So when the playoff selection comes around and bowl selection comes around, that the Big Ten gets the preference that it deserves to have. And that starts by winning those big out-of-conference games.
Yeah, and maybe you and I at some point, whether it's the next pod or at some other point in time, we can talk about, I know everyone is asking the question whether or not the Big Ten gets 3 or 4 teams or whatever, and we can put a little, maybe project what we think is going to happen or potentially could happen.
Yeah, we'll do it. Yeah. Should we tease that? Should we do that next week?
Yeah, that'd be good. Let's do it.
All right, awesome. Well, you look for that next week. I will go back and listen to this and make sure we caught that, and I don't forget about it immediately.
Got it. Okay. All right, on my note.
All right. Anything else, John, you want to say before we get out of here?
Yes, as always. If you want to find us at We Live for Saturday, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. You can also find us here on YouTube. You can find us on Twitter at We Live for B1GSat. You can find Mike at Alibaba26. You can find me at Norwegian Gopher. And if you want to email us, we also you can shoot us any questions, thoughts, ideas, whatever you want to talk about. We Live for Saturday, b1g@gmail.com.
Awesome. And if you are still here an hour and a half into this podcast, you are a real one. Hey, let's give a shout out right now to superfan Sherry.
Sherry,
Thank you for being a super fan. We appreciate you listening to the podcast whenever we come out with a new one.
heck yeah.
Yeah. So I'll do that. And thanks for rocking with us, and we'll see you next week.